Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend. I'm the Campaign Marketing Manager here with eLearning Brothers. Today, we're going to be talking about some lessons learned using CenarioVR. So there's going to be real-world examples in the pharmaceutical industry. It's going to be really, really fun. We're glad everybody joined. We will be sending a copy of this out to everybody who has registered, so you can view this after the fact at your leisure or share it around with those who you think would benefit from this content. We'll also be posting this on our blog probably early next week, so you can find it there if you lose the email. If you have questions during the webinar, we will be using the questions panel as a part of the GoToWebinar control panel, the one labeled questions. You can type anything you want in there and we'll get to as many of your questions as we can. We'll see your comments there as well and try to make this a little bit more interactive using that questions panel. If you have not already, please feel free to check out our community, the Rockstars community. We'll post a link for that in the chat so you can check that out. There's loads of content and conversation there, especially focused around virtual reality. We have a whole section dedicated to CenarioVR and virtual reality, and it's an active community. So we'd love it if you would join in there and continue the conversation. All right, we have a fantastic guest with us today. We've got Valerie Kazada, the instructional system designer at Takeda. Thanks for joining us. We're very excited for what you have to share. And without further ado, I'll turn the time over to you, Valerie.
Thank you, Andrew and eLearning Brothers. I am so excited to be here. This has been one of my most favorite software applications for, I don't know, I think I found out about it in, I want to say maybe 2018. I was in school and a professor had mentioned it and I was hooked. And so being able to share what I'm doing and have people listen to that is great. So any questions, please, guys, please put them in the chat. We will get to them. So another thing too is I'm onboarding other people with this app at my job site right now. So hearing them remind me how easy it is to use this application is so cool. Because some applications, it takes a while, to get used to the interface and what you're trying to do. But this one has been pretty, I'd say pretty easy. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. What I'm going to talk about first a little bit is about some of the hardware, because I know when I first diving into this, I was a little bit overwhelmed by what do I really need. I didn't have a lot of budget. And so what you basically see on the screen is what I use. I really haven't adjusted this much. So I do have a tripod. So I'm not going to sit there and hold this camera. I have the camera itself, and I have the memory cards. And I actually bought duplicates of the batteries and the memory cards because I'm sharing this with other people. And so if I need to take that memory card home or whatnot, there's a backup. And obviously the batteries are needed because you cannot just hook this up and charge it at the same time as you're using it. So having those extra batteries has really helped. Another thing about the camera, I'll probably bring this up again because it's a huge thing, is when you set up your camera, this camera, for example, I had to remember to make sure the settings are set for stitch. And what that means is the fish lenses, when you're done and you upload this, those images are already put together for you as you upload it into CenarioVR in the scene. Otherwise, it's a nightmare. So just make sure you remember to make sure the camera has that ability. Okay, so I have two projects I'm going to be sharing today, and I'm going to first start with the tour. I actually did multiple tours, but I'm just going to be sharing one of them with you. They're both very similar. What they do is they are allowing our site to share virtually different areas of the business. I cannot share everything because of the proprietary nature, but you're going to be seeing glimpses here and there, and I did pixelate along the way if needed. So that isn't the image of the camera doing that. That's me going back and editing it so that it's protected. But main reasons we did this is for tours, obviously, especially in the pandemic, we had to make it accessible, and then it works out really well just all the time. I work in a company that has places all over the world, And obviously it's not super easy to just fly over and check us out. So we can use it for that. We can also use it for vendors and new hires, you know, giving them a sample of what they're going to be doing during onboarding. And the other nice thing about this too is that I have the ability to modify as needed. So when something changes, I just go out, snap a picture, and replace the scene and the contents in it, and I'm ready to go again. So super easy for me to do that. It only takes a few minutes. So getting into the lab tour here, the what and the how. Obviously, I went in. It was actually pretty easy to be able to figure out what order to do these pictures in. The lab, for our lab, is kind of shaped in a U or a horseshoe. So my beginning and my end was really easy. So that's kind of how I captured my images. And then I had to decide on a color palette, which was still easy for me because I had to stay in line with our branding. And I was trying to be as accessible as I could with colors. I did add avatars you can see in this picture, and I got lucky because eLearning Brothers has a huge catalog of very diverse avatars, and I got lucky that they had one with a lab coat on them. So amazing that I didn't have the time to make my own. It would have been nice, but there's no way. The avatars have all the facial expressions and different poses and different clothing. So when they go from place to place, I could change that out if needed. The other thing I had to figure out is placement of all my hotspots and my info cards. And we're going to get into that a little bit in a few. But another thing I wanted to mention too is as I'm taking these pictures, I had to make sure the camera was kind of in the middle, and I tried to make sure that people weren't moving too much. If they started moving by the camera as I was physically taking the picture, you'd cause these streaks, and you can't get rid of that in post-editing. So trying to make sure that people were staying in one place and not too many people. It was nice to have a few people in my images to give proportionality, but to have too many people, it blocked the images I was trying to share. And you can't fix that after editing also. So I tried to keep it as realistic as it could be, but then here and there I might ask people to move around, or I would find times of the day when it was less busy. And I would try and point my main lens at the main point of view so that it was just clearer for what I was trying to show. Another thing too is I learned early on not to take too many pictures. Having too many choices can be a little rough afterward, trying to figure out which ones you want, because when you're looking at these in like an Explorer file, it's hard to manage and see which is which. They all kind of look the same. I did make sure I labeled my files really well. So each thing was labeled very specific for where it was and what was going on. So it would be easier for me to pop them in. And then when I'm linking them from place to place, I knew exactly what I was doing. I didn't have to keep going back and forth and looking at the picture.
So Valerie, I've got a question for you. So CenarioVR allows for pictures and videos. How did you decide where to go with pictures and where to go with videos, etc.?
Good question. Good question.
To have, if you're having, background people, it might be good to have video, but how do you make that decision?
It would. For this particular project, these tours, I just did still shots. I didn't do any video. I do have a second project I'm going to be sharing with you that is video. And the reason it was video is because there was actions happening that I needed to capture as they were going on. For the tour, it was stagnant, right? Nothing was really changing. I was just showing where things were and what they were and maybe how they functioned. But I didn't necessarily need that motion happening along the way.
Okay. One other question that came up, did you use a storyboard prior to development?
Good question. The right answer is yes, but no, I didn't for this particular project because I'm actually used to be a technical trainer on the floor at this particular job, and so I knew the flow. So I
Sure.
really didn't need, if I didn't know if it was something new to me, yeah, I probably would have had to storyboard it. So I knew where to go in and take the pictures and in what order they needed to be. But because I had given tours of this site previously, it was pretty easy for me to know what was going to be first, second, third, and so on.
Okay.
But good question.
Awesome.
So a little bit more deep dive on the icons and color and placement here. Like I said, I did do the color, the branding. We have obviously some blacks and whites and grays showing up here, which is pretty specific for our branding. But I did give our stakeholders a chance to try and figure out what ones they like better. I ultimately made the decision because I knew for accessibility reasons, having that example of that red on black was awful. And that would not be accessible. Although VR is not accessible in its nature, I was trying to still follow some of those rules and not just go crazy with it. So I did pick the info cards, I picked the black on white, and then for the icons, I did do a shade of gray. It's harder to see in this picture, but it is actually a shade of gray. And I tried to place things in a way that made sense. So for example, the questions and the maps, which I'm going to show, I tried to put them at the bottom of the screen, kind of in the middle where the person would first walk into. But it was hard because depending on what that image was showing, and I used a black icon, sometimes that background had black or a tinge of black, and then they would get lost in it. So then I would have to move things around and try and shift things to make things visible for the user. Afterthoughts now, some of the map features and the question features probably aren't even being used. I probably only needed to put them on a few specific scenes. So hindsight, right, that, maybe I would think differently about that in the future, or if in the future CenarioVR came up with some kind of master slide I could use and put them in one spot, no matter where I was, that'd be really nice too. But for now, I did what I could based on what that image looked like. So I'm going to go ahead and move on here. So here's an example of one of the maps, the navigation maps that I used. I didn't create these from scratch. I did use existing material for them. I just didn't have the time to sit there and create some of these, but I did modify as needed. So you can see here that this one actually is showing two maps within one because there's actually two locations apart from each other that it's sharing. And I'll talk about how I did this a little bit in a little bit, but I did add these hyperlinks so that I tried to keep the tour guided so that they would start at point A and end in point B. But if people kind of knew where they were going and wanted to see one specific area, I was allowing for them to do that with these hyperlinks. And then I always showed them where they were, which is nice. So I was hinting at some grouping too. I'm going to talk about grouping in the secondary project because I have a better image to share with that, and it's more detailed than what I have here. So on that, some potential savings. At this point, I haven't figured out any cost savings. I just know that at this point, it's pretty priceless, right? People don't need to get on airplanes. They don't have to do any hotel. They can literally be sitting at home or in the office. The way I've set this up is they request access to it. And then I'm using this through the CenarioVR host, and I go ahead and add them in as a user, and they have access to it. I have put a time limit for our nature of business because I can only have so many users at a time. And so I need to make sure that everyone will get a chance. But they can always request it again if they needed to. So another thing too that's great is they can do this 24/7, 365 days a year, right? They can do it any time of day they want. For now, these are just set up for desktop or mobile, so they can use it on a tablet or their phone. But I'm hoping in the future we'll be able to set it up for the headsets. But right now it just hasn't happened at our site, and then the ability to be able to clean them and deal with that part, you know, it's just not in a managed state right now to be able to do that. We have publicized it throughout our private social media on the site through it's Yammer that we use, and so everyone that wants to know about it can find out about it and request it. So that's been super exciting, seeing all the different requests come in globally for people and all walks of life wanting to check it out from all areas of the business. So it's been very cool, and then some of the feedback has been really cool too. Hearing people super excited to be able to see the site. Okay, I'm going to move on to my second example, and this one is not a tour. It's actually a training project that I've been putting together. It's in a pilot stage right now. I'm still tweaking it as we are speaking, but I can still share what we are doing with it and why. So the reason we're trying to do this one is one of my pet peeves, and I've been struggling with it for a really long time, is our read and understand in our industry. So we're very compliant in nature, and one of the things that people have to do when they come into the business is before they start performing tasks, they have to read these long documents, or what could be long documents, of something they may have no knowledge about to begin with. So what I'm hoping to do with this is try to reduce or actually get rid of that read and understand and replace it with something visual. And so being able to do that with CenarioVR has been really exciting. A lot of the people that have been reviewing this for me are super excited about where this could lead us. So what I've been doing is I embed the link of the project and or a QR code into our document that they can have access to. And instead of reading about it, they can watch it and interact with it. So I know this is a still shot that you're looking at, but this is actually a video, a portion of a video that you're looking at right now. So similar steps that I took, I went in and I had to capture the video with the same camera. It's able to do pretty nice 4K video, but after editing that video, it did reduce the quality. It's still pretty good. It's still HD. I think what I would do is I would use a different application for editing next time. I used Camtasia, and I should have probably used Adobe Premiere Pro. It has that function in there to work with equirectangular imagery and not reduce the resolution. So next time, you know, lessons learned for me. Color palette, I still kept it pretty basic. I just stayed with this black and white. And my avatar, still great solution here. I was able to find avatars. She's actually wearing scrubs, which isn't exactly what they're wearing, but it's pretty close. And then what I've heard, you know, she obviously looks like an avatar. She obviously is not in the room physically. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to talk a little bit about the placement, and I'm going to talk about knowledge questions as I go into these slides in more detail. So we're looking at an example of one of them, and what I did here for this particular one is I had info cards around my 360 space, and then I realized that a lot of these people that are going to be participating in this are new to VR, that they don't know where things are. So I did provide a ton of information for people, maybe more than I normally would, letting people know where to go next. And so in this instance, you'll see that they are going to know how many numbers to click on, for example, so that they just don't assume there's nothing else, and if they look away, they miss something. So that's super helpful, I think, for the learner. And then what I also did is I used the timed event down at the bottom. These red flags down at the bottom are actually timed events. And as they pop up, my numeral pops up, which allows the user to click on it and then open an info card to explain whatever's happening in the video. more details of whatever technique is being shown. And they can close these and reopen them again. I left it open for the user to decide that space or that problem. So that's been working really well so far. I'm still tweaking, like I said. So another thing that I wanted to show you that's kind of cool that I've been playing around with, and it seems to be working really well for this type of training, is I've been adding imagery on top of the video, and I've been grouping them. So what happens is when they click on the one, it actually opens up the info card and the imagery next to it, and then they can close it again as they move on, or they can keep it open. It doesn't matter. It depends on the user. But if they close it, then they can see more space behind them. So that's been really good. And then the other thing, which I'm going to discuss here, you see over here on the edge, is a knowledge check. Because this is a training, we kind of wanted to know that they were paying attention and actually going through the material. So I added in some knowledge checks on each of the scenes. And so here's an example of the knowledge check. This is one of the first ones in the project. So I'm just making sure they actually tried out the navigation here. And if they had it, I wanted them to. And then I created these info cards for feedback, which I'm going to talk about here. So when you actually open up the knowledge check to edit it, this is what it's going to look like. And so here's my question. And then I have different correct or incorrect, and based on different actions, different things are going to happen. Very similar to like an e-learning, right, guys? So I'm going to go into more detail on that on the next screen. So here's our knowledge check. And so what I did is I created those info cards, right, that are correct and incorrect, depending on which one they select is which info card's gonna appear. And then because I'm going to be publishing this as a SCORM package to dump into our learning management system, I did add a score if they got it correct. So pretty easy to do. Just took a few clicks to do all this, which was really, really nice. So potential savings for this one, I'm not sure yet. Obviously still in pilot. We are using this as an agile project, which is kind of exciting also. So like I said, I am going to be publishing this one in SCORM, so I won't be using CenarioVR's hosting, obviously, for this one. It will be living in our LMS and our DMS. It makes it a little bit complicated because the approval process, right? I have to use CenarioVR for the approval process. So I have to bring my approvers into there to review. But then I will upload a zip to the DMS for storing, the document management system for storing it. And then I will upload a SCORM package to our LMS, our learning management system, to assign it to the different users. And then our hope for right now is to have them use this in the tablets that we have in different locations. Eventually it'd be great to use headsets, but like I said before, we're not quite there yet. And another component that I'm adding to this is QR codes or URL links that we have in obviously the documents, but then I'm also wanting to add it to the equipment, engrave it near or on the equipment to have it accessible, so that when a learner has already used this information, either for the first time or they want a refresher, they have an immediate place to go to get it. They don't have to scroll through or open up another computer program to go find it. It will be accessible right then, right there for them to just get to.
So, Valerie, a couple questions
Sure.
just about deployment for your courses. And you kind of went over that. So are your learners using headsets and controllers, or how are they interacting with this VR content?
Yeah, for now, we aren't using the headsets. It does look amazing. I've actually checked it out on my son's system. He has a VR set at home, and it does look great. But for now, what we're doing is we are using tablets or desktop. So they do have to navigate either using their mouse or their arrows on their touchpad, or if they're using a phone or a tablet, they can use their fingers to navigate around and open and close things, which still works really nice. It just would be really nice once we can start optimizing and using the headsets too.
Yeah, if you go that route, people are wanting to know what headsets is the company considering, if they're at that point yet.
Yeah, we're not at that point yet. We just haven't gotten that far. We know we are going to do that. We just haven't narrowed down the choices.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about LMS when you're deploying this? Are you deploying it through ScenarioVR native, or are you deploying through an LMS?
So for this particular project, we're going to be launching it through our LMS, a learning management system, because we need to assign it to particular learners and have it show up in their training that they've completed it. For the tours, no, it's not a mandatory thing. It's for fun, and so we're just hosting that one straight out of ScenarioVR.
Okay, excellent. I'm gonna jump in here also with one other thing. There's a lot of questions about deploying VR in a headset, and that's a tough one. And I don't know what you may be testing with, if you test with multiple headsets on your own, but for me, I'll test on my Oculus Quest, or I'll test on a Google Cardboard and just send the course directly to my phone. And that's a super easy way to do it, because I don't have to install the course on the Quest. So in the Quest, there's a ScenarioVR app and it'll automatically sync, but you have to download each course to the Quest. If you do it on your phone, it just streams it through through the browser. But tell us about what you used.
Yeah, for my son, he actually has the HTC Vive. So I did obviously have to download it from his computer and test it out there. I haven't tried the cardboard. I do need to check it out because that would help reduce with the cleaning, right? Because cardboard, they're reasonably cheap enough that you could pretty much get one for everyone, and or recycle them after they're being used. So that would be a really good option. And I know I've seen online that you can actually get some of these cardboard ones with your brand on them. So, that would it'd probably be a good way to pilot it, if nothing else, before you jump in and spend the money on the hardware and test it out with a small population.
Yeah.
Definitely. Good options. Cool, thank you. Okay, so some lessons learned so you guys don't fall into the same errors I did. So one of the worst errors and lessons learned that I figured out the hard way was when I created some of my images outside of ScenarioVR, for example, the map or the help information, I created those in PowerPoint and then turned them into an image and brought them in. Well, which is great, looks great, but I should have had feedback done prior to putting them on every single scene. I didn't do that. And so once I did have someone review it for grammar and punctuation, all that good stuff, I had a few errors. I had to tweak, and I literally had to go back to every single scene and replace it. So not fun. So I definitely don't do that to yourself. Make sure someone vets it first before you put it on every scene. Saves you lots of time and frustration. I think I ended up having to replace it on one project for the tour. I don't even know how many scenes I had. I probably had close to 70 scenes. And so, yeah, literally had to sit there and replace on every single one. So don't do that. Not fun. Next one, related to the 365 video, definitely much easier if you take some shorter video, much easier to edit than to sit there and try and edit very long video. I thought, okay, I'll just videotape everything from start to end. It was basically 5 steps and nightmare, like trying to go in and edit that at the end. I should have just basically turned on, turned off during each step, because I only literally need a minute of each step. I didn't need to show someone 20 minutes of the same thing. That wouldn't do well for my learner. So just another lesson learned. The next one I learned the hard way is definitely have those extra batteries handy and charged. There's a few times, not so much with the still shots. I did okay with the still shots with battery life, but with the videos, it sucks the battery life. And so once it died on me, I kept thinking, okay, well, I'll hook it up and just keep it charging as I am filming, and it doesn't allow for that. And they recommend against it for this particular camera. So having those extra batteries is a lifesaver. The other one I learned, I love feedback. I have templates I've created and I send out with my projects to, obviously I have different types of SMEs, subject matter experts, review all of my work. But some of the people I had reviewing my work didn't necessarily know or understand CenarioVR or the VR in general. And so things that might be considered in some type of e-learning authoring tool as a no-no, not quite such a no-no in CenarioVR, right? I had to place things in a certain way, maybe because of the way the app is, but it was hard to explain that to everyone that did my SME. So I obviously would look at all the feedback and take it in consideration and realize what's best for the learner and for the application itself. So that was definitely very, good to know about. So the upcoming projects, this is my fun one. So yeah, I'm working on the training one alongside this, obviously, and there's other projects down the road. But my next big one that I'm working on is a scavenger hunt. So this one's really, I think, will be fun. I'm going to try out some new things in this one. I'm planning to do this with maybe 4 or 5 scenes. And what we're trying to do is engage the employees on some new quality culture. So my plan is to use different questions or clues that they have to find these 3D models. So I'm jumping into the world of 3D models. I'm still trying to figure that out. I've been on the community board, eLearning's Brothers Community Board, to help me try and figure some of this stuff out. But if any of you out there have been working on this, it would be great to share. So what I'm doing is using these 3D models and they're finding them, and then eventually at the end I will connect them to some type of Microsoft form that they complete to show that they have done the scavenger hunt, and then there's going to be some kind of swag that they get at the end to use. So definitely any suggestions on that one would be great. Definitely a new learning curve. I've learned that I do not want to learn how to create 3D models from scratch. I've seen a few different applications where I could do it, but way outside my learning curve at this point in the game. I don't have the time to do that at this point.
Yeah, overcoming challenges is a big part of it. But like you said, the community is a great place to go to get that kind of help. We have people coming in the comments. Sketchfab.com is a place that we've gone for the 3D models. One person here wants to know why you used custom scoring in your course.
Custom scoring for the knowledge checks, I'm assuming they're talking about. Good question. Why did I use custom scoring? I think my thought process with that one is when the learner is done, I'm going to want them to have some sort of percentage of points to be able to sign off in my learning management system instead of just doing a complete or incomplete for the project or for the course.
Sure.
I'm still kind of working on that one and trying to, it's still in pilot mode. So I haven't even dumped it into the LMS yet to kind of check it out and play with it. But it's my thought process for it at this point is what I was thinking.
Yeah, I remember when I was building our Thanksgiving game last fall with a with the scoring feature, and it took me a little bit to find the variables button and see all of the capabilities that are there in the variables section, including, you know, tracking and scoring and things like that. So like the number of questions with 100 points per question, things like that. So I mean, there's things that are possible, and again, this is a great example. Good shout out to the community that can help if you're running into problems there. But yeah, but there's also lots of different ways to accomplish it. There's more. What's the phrase? The horrible, horrible phrase. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah, and I'm still tweaking with that too. It may not be the way I set it up, may not be the best way. It was just at the time when I was playing with the actions, I was like, oh, well, this seems to work. And so
Yep.
I went with it. But yeah, you're right. Once I get it into the LMS, I might have to modify depending on how it actually works with the LMS. I might have to go back and tweak that at this point. So I'm hoping it will be something to that fact. And I still myself, as much as I've been playing, I use the word playing quote in quotes, and CenarioVR, I still have a lot to learn too, right? I'm still trying to, depending on the project, is what I need at that moment. So I do need to deep dive more into some of these more variables that Andrew was talking about and learn more. But it's fun. Like playing in this app is, you know, it's like, oh, I get to go play with CenarioVR project today. Yay! You know, I'm super excited about it. It's a fun one, and I've been doing this for a little while with it. So, and it's still fun. And they keep adding things to it all the time, which is great too. I'll go into the library. I'm like, oh, that wasn't there last time. And so obviously I can play with something new, some new hotspots or whatever it might be. And I'm assuming their 3D library might get bigger and bigger too at some point. And yes, Sketchfab is great. That was something recommended for the 3D modeling, and I've been checking it out and playing with it, and it is a great resource for 3D objects. So yes, thank you for that. Okay, well, at this point, I have actually covered all my material, but if there's any other specific questions, I can go backwards and look at those too. I have no problem with that. Or more specific questions that are being asked about any of the projects.
I will give some people an opportunity to ask a question about the project in particular. Yeah, there's here a question about Sketchfab. It's Sketch SKETCH fab, like fabrication, FAB.com. We can probably send that out in the follow-up email if you guys would like to go there for your 3D object needs. There's a lot of questions, as there usually are, about deployment. People asking about how to deploy that on cardboard. There's a couple ways you can do that if you're going to your cell phone. There is a CenarioVR app for the phone that you could download and send it out that way. There's also a, if you, in your LMS or however, if you send it to your phone, you can open it in the browser and then open it directly through Chrome and probably other browsers as well, anything that is Chromium powered. You can immediately launch that into a VR mode and put it into a headset. And so that works really nicely. A couple questions about, hang on, let me read this one. Okay, so some questions. If you didn't want to use a cutout person to stand in your audience, and you're just taking pictures, could you have a real person stand in that? And is the camera taking lots of pictures and putting them together? So if they move, they might look a little bit weird, or is it capturing all at once so that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, I could technically have a person standing somewhere and use them as my model, as long as they don't move too fast or right at the second that the camera is taking that picture. You don't get the streaking motion. I do have a few pictures where, yeah, when people are moving, if they lift their hands slowly, yeah, you'd see a slight streak, but nothing that would make me not use the picture. But if people are like really like walking across the room, yeah, they have a nice streak hanging behind them. But that's a good idea to have someone maybe that you could use as your model standing nearby. The problem, yeah, no, you could. I mean, it's, yeah, if they're not moving, and most of my avatars don't move within the 3D or the 360 once I put them somewhere. I don't make them, I haven't used the motion path, let's say, to have them move around because I haven't really needed to. So yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I
Especially
guess
if there was nothing.
The real problem is that you can't move them in post because it'd be a part of your background image.
So you'd have to really know where you want them at that moment.
Which I guess if you storyboard it out.
Yes, true. You storyboard it out. Although in this particular project, my machine doesn't move. So I only had so many places to put people. So it would probably be pretty easy in that sense because pretty much the entire room has the piece of machinery in it. It's a big piece of machinery. And so there's only a few places I could actually put people.
Right.
So for that particular thing, but yeah, otherwise I would have to storyboard it out if it was more of an open room. And they, you know, they would need to be in multiple places perhaps. Sure.
That also, I don't know if you mentioned it previously, you may have when you were talking about the camera, but people want to know how you, if it's a 360 camera, how are you not in the picture?
Because I've been very good about hiding. I figured that early on. So the way this camera works is it actually has an application that connects to my phone. So my phone is actually the remote control to take the picture. And I can actually set it up with a delay too. I can't get too far away from the camera though because it's using either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. So in some pictures, I'm there because I needed a person at the moment. If I'm walking down a hallway, I didn't want it to be a bare hallway. So you'll see the back of me in some pictures. But in a majority of the pictures, I'm either hiding behind the machinery or hiding behind a wall, or I find something to hide behind because I did not want to be in every single picture either. Like that would be awkward. But yeah, I got pretty good at hiding even in a 360 world. Technically too, if I stood right next to the camera, like underneath it, you know, and by the tripod, technically people wouldn't see me unless they pan down to it, sure, which most people don't tend to do that. I could do that. And then I could go in and edit too. You can throw all these images into Adobe Photoshop and stamp them out, erase them, you know, using the different tools. I had so many images for some of these projects that I decided not to do that. But I know that I probably at some point should, you know, make it clean and get rid of the camera.
Sure.
But when it's funny because people don't realize this, but when you put these pictures into editing software, it's a rectangle. So your camera is literally at the whole bottom of the rectangular. So it's not like it's just one easy little spot in the middle of a picture. You literally have to erase or hide, you know, an entire bottom field to get rid of it. So it's not as easy as it seems. And then when it brings it back together into that globe look, you can see a pattern depending on how good you are at it. It kind of spirals out from that little center spot because when it puts it back together, that rectangle comes back together. So I think it would take practice for me to get really, really good at it. I know I've seen stuff out there where people have been good at it. Another thing too is where it actually stitches. In some photos, depending on the lighting, you can sometimes see that stitching. There'll be some kind of light or something that kind of shows. It's very minimal. I haven't really had anyone say something to me like, what is that? But I usually can notice it as I'm looking through an image. I'll be like, oh, right, there it is.
My experience is that that stitching shows more on a smaller room. The smaller the space you're capturing, the easier it is to spot the stitching line. So that's something
that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, most of the areas I'm doing are pretty large. The rooms are large, or I'm outside or in a big room. So yeah, I think I've noticed it more if the sun's hitting a certain way, and I don't know, it's just the way it hits that stitch of mine. I can see it kind of scatter, basically. Right. It looks like it's scattering. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a question here about the learning curve. Somebody wants to know, so if I'm wanting to get into VR, is it going to be really hard to get started?
No. Let me go to the next screen. So I actually used this free 30-day trial when I first was checking it out. So easy, guys. I went and got the camera, bought the camera and played with it for the 30 days, and it was so easy. Like, I jumped in feet first, and it's nice because within the app itself there is some way to go to the tutorials, and there's some very nice tutorials that are quick and easy if you kind of get lost. But for the most part, I was able to click around and play with it and figure it out. I didn't need a huge amount of guidance on actually playing with the application. The learning curve was very low. And like I said, I'm onboarding some new people right now, and they're like, oh, wow, yeah, this is way easier than I thought it was going to be. And they're super excited to jump in. It feels like you're playing in this cool world. It doesn't feel like work.
Awesome. That's what we like to hear.
I know, right? It is, though. I mean, I'm not an IT person. That is not my background. I tend to gravitate towards IT stuff a little bit easier maybe than the average person, but it's still not my background. I still, don't just log in and, I'm not at Andrew's level by any means at that point, right? I had to play around with it a little bit, but I feel like from all the applications I've played with in the last few years, it's been one of the easiest.
That's
Definitely.
awesome. That is great to hear. So yeah, Valerie said it all for me. Go get a free trial of CenarioVR. You can go to elearningbrothers.com and find under Create Learning. You'll see CenarioVR there, and you can grab a free trial, 30 days, and you can build all kinds of really, really cool stuff. The asset library that comes with CenarioVR when you purchase it, so you can also get a free trial of the asset library at the same time as you're getting the free trial of CenarioVR, but they have some 360 rectangular images, so you don't have to go out and capture them. You can just download them and throw them in there and see what they look like. I grabbed one of the Great Dragon Pagoda, which is a really cool, big, huge temple thing. I think it's in India. It might be in Pakistan. I don't remember, but that was in there. I threw it into CenarioVR, and suddenly I was there. And it's a video, and you see people walking through and touring the facility, and it's very, 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 very cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can grab those kinds of things. You can also find equirectangular or spherical 360 images in other places online. There's a lot of places to get those. So if you don't have a 360 camera and you want to try something like that, you can. You can also capture those on your phone. If you have an Android, it's usually built into the camera. It's called spherical image capture, and I use that all the time. If you're on Apple, I think there's other apps as well. You can download for free the Google Maps. No, what's it called? Man, I don't remember. We did a blog on this, and I do not remember. But there's a Street View. Yeah, Google Maps Street View app, and it does the exact same thing, and you can just download the image that you capture instead of uploading it to Google's Maps. So that's another way we've seen people capture them. There's a lot of different ways to capture those if you don't have an actual 360 camera, like the one you used. It was a Yi 360.
Yeah, I actually have a Yi 360, very basic model. It doesn't, there's so many models. I got something super easy to try it out. But also about that library, it's amazing because I can use it for other projects too, not just CenarioVR. So I love it for CenarioVR, but there's a lot of stuff in there. Like
Millions.
It's a great tool for a lot of my projects.
So awesome. Go grab a free trial of CenarioVR. Thank you, Valerie. This has been very, very helpful. We've got a lot of people that are excited about 3D development now. So,
Awesome.
Get out there and build something great. Join us on the Rockstars community. We can continue this conversation, and people are there happy to answer questions and pitch different ideas and find solutions to e-learning problems. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Valerie. And
thank you.
We'll see you around. Bye-bye.